podcast, the ROS Developers. The ROS Developers podcast, the ROS Developers.
Hello, ROS developers, and welcome to the ROS Developers podcast, the podcast that gives you insights from the experts about how to program your robots with ROS. This is Ricardo Tellez from The Construct, and today we are continuing with the series of podcast interviews that we did at the ROSCON in 2019. Also, what I would like to say is that I would like to dedicate this episode to all those ROS developers that do not use ROS on Ubuntu. You know, because I am one of the users of ROS and Ubuntu, and it's the easy way. It's the safest way to use ROS. But I know that there are some developers over there that they are not using ROS and Ubuntu on other distributions like Debian or Arch Linux or any other. So those guys, they are a lot tougher than myself, for example. So for all of you, this episode is dedicated to you. And today we are going to talk with the team, with a team of people that they work at Canonical. You know, the company behind the development of Ubuntu. But before going into that point, let me remind you about our ROS Online Academy. Yes, at the Construct, we have created an online academy named the Robot Ignite Academy for learning ROS in a fast way. It contains a ROS learning path for beginners, for example. So in this beginner's path, you can start by teaching you Linux and Python for robotics. So you get set up before start trying to learn ROS, and then we continue teaching you all the basics of ROS concepts, like what is a subject, topic, what is a package, what is a message. So by doing this, you will master ROS, and then you can continue the course, the path that teaches you how to build your own robot, physical robot, and how to ROSify it. Adding control to it and creating a simulation for it, etc. So you can finally become a real ROS developer. I will put a link to the Academy in the show notes beneath this podcast. So now it is my pleasure to introduce you to Jeremy Duray and Dragan Stancevic, two guys from Canonical that are attending here at ROSCON. Jeremy is a software developer at the Robotics team of Canonical, but he also was a ROS developer with several years' experience building ROS software for humanoid robots. And Dragan, he is the robotics security engineer at Canonical. He is the responsive person for securing ROS. So welcome to the podcast, Jeremy and Dragan.
Hey there, thank you for having us.
Thank you, Ricardo, for having us, and hopefully we can answer the questions that people have with regards to Ubuntu and ROS relationship.
Yes, I'm sure. So one thing, I don't know if I pronounce it, your surname correctly. I say it's Stancevic. Is that correct?
It's pretty close. It's Stancevic.
It's Stancevic.
Yes,
okay.
yes. But I've heard all the versions, so you don't insult me if you get it wrong.
Sorry, it was not my purpose of auto. That happened to me also with my surname. That is Tellez. I mean Spanish, Tellez, but I got Tellez many times and Tele or something.
Yeah, I understand it. I get mail addressed to Dr. Egan because people see my name and they think, oh, something's wrong here, and they put a dot between DR and Egan. So
Dr. Egan. Okay, that's funny. That's good. Okay, so then let's start by explaining to the audience what do you do at Canonical. So what is your relation of your work with ROS? So can you start, Dragan?
Yes, absolutely. So I am the robotic security engineer at Canonical, and I am by definition on the security team. My responsibilities are anything from analyzing ROS code for vulnerabilities and all the way to participating in the security work group and meetings and so forth.
Okay. And what about you, Jeremy?
So I'm working in the Robotics team at Canonical, and our day-to-day job is to make sure that the user experience of ROS on Ubuntu is as smooth as possible. We want people to love using ROS on Ubuntu and to keep using Ubuntu for the further development of ROS 2.
Okay, great. It's clear, very clear. And then the question, I have one question because I think it was from the last ROSCON or something like that, or on the last ROS industrial workshop, it was in December, that I started to see a lot of people from Canonical at the ROSCON. So why so many people? Are you presenting something here at the conference?
Canonical is making a commitment of supporting ROS. If your listeners are aware, Canonical offers support beyond LTS. So we offer ESM, which is Extended Security Maintenance Releases that go
What does it mean?
as far. If you subscribe to ESM in Ubuntu, you get security patches for 10 years as opposed to the shorter LTS releases. So we're kind of going beyond of offering this ESM releases for just Ubuntu. We want to also support ROS as part of ESM as well, to offer people 10-year support of whatever ROS platform or ROS version they are using, so they continue to get patches, security patches, because the development process for robotics sometimes, if a distribution or ROS version is supported for 5 years, you might release your robot towards the middle of that or even close to the end. So you're really kind of taking a big risk. So we want to basically offer users a safety net, with regards to not just Ubuntu, but also robotics.
That's super interesting. I had no idea about that, and that did existed. So I will put a link on the notes of this podcast, on the show note that is linking to those. What's the acronym?
Extended Security Maintenance, ESM.
ESM. Okay, ESM.
Yes.
So it's a comparison between ESM and LTS. That means long-term support.
Yes, exactly. So long-term support has been very popular, but what we're noticing is that we have users that really want to go beyond the LTS, and we don't want to just leave them out in the cold, because there's definitely industries where you need 10 years of supported platform.
Yeah, it's very nice that you mentioned this example of the company that is building their product, but then of course when you're building a robotics product, it's super complex, and at that time the time is passing. So by the time that you are going to release maybe the distribution you are based on, it's almost about to
yes, and
so
we don't
that's
wanna,
why
exactly.
Oh, it's great, very good point. And then what next question is it's for information for the listeners about Canonical and Ubuntu, because we use Ubuntu for ROS as per default, but we don't know really what is behind. So I think it's interesting for the audience to know if there is a specific team dedicated to everything related to ROS at Canonical.
Yes. So I guess we have sort of a virtual team between the robotics team. So we have a real robotics team at Canonical that are, pure roboticists, such as Jeremy. And then part of the security team is also dedicated to ROS as well. So we formed sort of a virtual team across those two teams.
Okay. I understand the security one and the roboticist one. And what do you do, the roboticists at Canonical? What are you in charge of?
So the day-to-day work would be bug fixing, answering tickets on whatever Git repo related to ROS, not necessarily ours, but we are contributing to the greater open source community that has interest in ROS. And for instance, we are developing tools for ROS2, the command line interface. We have contributed numerous tools to the clean ROS2, and we are also porting some nodes from ROS1 to ROS2. So, for instance, the teleop tools, the meta package, with the key teleop, child teleop, etc. That existed in ROS1. We ported it to ROS2 because we simply needed it for day-to-day development. So I'm happy if any of you can benefit from that. And let us know. Get to the GitHub repo and open some tickets if necessary. Let us know.
Okay, that's super interesting that you mentioned about this package. So I'm going to also to put a link on the show notes so people can go to that package, to the teleop package for, this is the typical in ROS1 that is allow us to move the robots off the shelf. So that publishing on the common bell, typical.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's already been ported to ROS2 by the Canonical guys. And so you are called Canonical guys or the Ubuntu guys?
Well, I guess Ubuntu brand seems a little stronger than Canonical brand.
Yes,
so
exactly.
sometimes we have to, when we say Canonical, we get a blank stare. And then we say Ubuntu, and then everybody knows.
Exactly.
So it definitely there's a little bit of a discrepancy in the branding there.
Yes.
That's why one of our motto is Canonical, the company behind Ubuntu.
Okay, makes sense. But it's an example of things that so the object is taking the brand of the company. In our case, for the construct, it happens just the opposite. So the people say, "No, I'm using the construct," and I say, "No, but the construct is the name of the company. You are using our product, that is a ROS Development Studio." Or the Robotic Night Academy, our two products, but the people they say, no, we are using the construct. In your case, it's just the other way around.
The other way around.
So you are from Ubuntu.
Yes.
Okay, great. Let me see the other question because I have the question here just for the audience. Okay, I have here the questions at least, but we get engaged in the conversation and then I forget about the next one, so I have to look at the list. So. I have a question here about real time, because most of the robots that we use, they don't require to have real time. But in some others, for example, in humanoids or things that require loop very, very fast and not very fast loop, but that is executed at the perfect timing, then we require to have real time control. And then how can the people use Ubuntu with real time? Are you providing anything special for that, for allowing people to use real time in Ubuntu?
So we are not distributing anything real time friendly or safe with Ubuntu. The people, the listeners that are interested in real time know about the preempt patch to the Linux kernel, and we are not distributing it ourselves. However, anyone can build the kernel for themselves and then use Ubuntu on top of it. There is no problem with that. However, I heard that the patch is finally getting merged to the main line of the Linux kernel, so probably that in a few years we'll see an Ubuntu version released with the patched kernel.
By default,
By default, I mean.
So
yeah.
okay. So if I have understood correctly, then your Ubuntu works off the shelf, works without real-time support, but it has this patch that can be applied by anybody that needs to do it. So they get this open source patch for real-time, and they apply to Ubuntu.
And rebuild.
And then rebuild the kernel, and then that's working. And then you have, because Linux, they have already included this patch by default in the kernel, then Ubuntu will release one of the next versions. I don't know. We don't know yet which
don't know
number.
Yeah, we don't know yet. It might even make it into hardware support kernels. Just for your listeners that aren't familiar, Ubuntu releases several types of kernels, and with the long-term support releases, we have customers or users that need access to newer drivers. So we ship sort of the original kernels that came with the LTS, and then we ship hardware enablement kernels as well, which is a newer kernel release. So it might make it into one of those before we actually pull in the mainline. Yes.
Okay. So just to summarize, if you want to use Ubuntu with real time, there is no problem. Just get Ubuntu, get the patch, and apply. And in sometimes in the future, maybe when you are listening this in 1 year time, if you are listening 1 year time from now, then just Ubuntu will have already this patch applied. So maybe in future releases, so you don't have to do this extra step.
Correct. Yes, and it might make it in sooner than later, especially with Canonical making a commitment to ROS community.
Okay, great. So stay tuned, listeners, because in case that this happens, we'll report that to you very quickly. So, okay, next question is. We are talking here about using Ubuntu in a typical computer. So usual robots here that work with ROS, they usually have a PC computer, even if it's not a desktop one, but it's a NUC or something that is quite powerful, that has all the systems of a typical computer, of a PC computer. But what about using Ubuntu in simpler systems, like I would say Raspberry Pi? So how does this handles Ubuntu?
We have Ubuntu runs on many flavors, from S390 mainframe systems down to Raspberry Pi, for example. So we do release Ubuntu Core and Ubuntu Server for those platforms. You just have to get the right image. We release it for ARC64, for example, for the 64-bit ARM, and we also release it for the 32-bit ARM as well. So the process is you download the image for your platform and you DD it on your SD card and you boot Ubuntu Server, for example.
Yeah, that DD means that you are binary copying the file into the hard disk.
On the SD card, yes.
In the file system, yeah.
Yes.
It's an SD card or hard disk or whatever.
Yes, the image contains a file system, and so when you move it onto an SD card, you don't have to do anything special.
Because it boots like a normal.
Yes. The difference is on an x86 based platform, such as Intel, you have an installer that you go through the process, and sometimes that can't be available on these SBCs, single board computers. Therefore, the image itself is mostly pre-installed. There might be some configuration that you do after the boot, but most of it is already pre-installed, so there's no waiting to download or anything like that.
Great. We have used this one version for a project that we have in our website, in our YouTube channel. If you visit our YouTube channel, you will see that we have a project about using a Raspberry Pi for controlling. It's a wheel robot. So we show how to do this wheel robot with ROS and using a Raspberry Pi. And then we install a version that is called Ubuntu Mate.
Yes.
So what is this Ubuntu Mate is also produced by Ubuntu or by third parties?
It's a third party community project, that the organization puts out. It's based on Ubuntu. The difference being is I think their focus is on the desktop, while we on the other hand have server images that are much smaller, with much smaller memory usage, fewer packages. So when it comes to security, your attack surface is smaller. So you save a lot of resources as well.
Yeah, that could be. I think that could be more convenient for a project based on ROS on a Raspberry Pi instead of installing Ubuntu Mate. What do you think?
Yeah, so essentially for the Raspberry Pi, you would install the Ubuntu server, because Ubuntu server is Ubuntu without the graphical interface and a lot of packages that doesn't make sense on a server. So you get the essential portion of Ubuntu that you need, and there is no interface, a graphical interface. I mean, you would access it through SSH, the terminal, and that's it.
And that's it,
and you're
because
saving a lot of space, a lot of memory, a lot of
running
CPU,
resources.
etc.
Exactly. Okay. So let me just send some task to Miguel, who is one from my team, and that he's the one who created this project. So Miguel, remember that you have to modify the project. So we changed from installing Raspberry Pi to the Ubuntu Mate to Ubuntu Server. Okay, Miguel, just task managing. I take this time.
Yeah, and the transition is very simple.
Okay.
Not very many steps involved. So yeah, I definitely recommend it.
Great. Yes, go ahead, please.
If I may, the Ubuntu Mate project, the community is led by Martin Wimpress, who was just who has been promoted to be the head of Ubuntu desktop development.
Okay.
Expect a lot of goodies in the future version of Ubuntu.
Oh, great, perfect. And remember that you listen that here at the ROS Developers podcast. So very good. And so let's go to one subject that I'm very interested to really learn more about, and are the snaps. So what are the snaps in Ubuntu and why they are so important for robotics?
So snaps are a way of packaging developers' applications and a way of distributing them. It provides an isolation of the application because snaps are non-modifiable. They're immutable sort of quantas that you upgrade in discrete sort of like units. So when you have a snap, you install the snap, you want to upgrade, you run the upgrade on the snap. If it doesn't work for whatever reason, you can easily downgrade back that snap. The difference being between, for example, a JVM package and a snap is a JVM package has dependencies that during an upgrade perhaps could break, and then you end up in a mess trying to downgrade. Snaps, on the other hand, are, like I said, they're discrete units that come with all the predetermined sort of dependencies for that particular application.
Okay, then let's make an analogy with phones and applications on the phone, so that people can easily understand the similarity. So let's imagine that I have my phone and I have an app, for example, the WhatsApp application. And then there is on the App Store it says, WhatsApp has a new upgrade. So you upgrade your app, and then what happened many times with not with WhatsApp, but with other applications, is that you upgrade that app, and then afterwards it doesn't work for whatever the reason. So, and then at that point in time, you cannot use this application anymore until the developers they do release a new version that corrects the errors. But with a snap, if I have understood, you can kind of revert, go to the previous version that was working up to that point.
Yes, correct. Yeah, and that's a good analogy, I guess. Phone applications where you have this upgrade path, but you also have a downgrade path.
Exactly, a downgrade path.
And to mention that as they are self-contained, you don't have any library versioning clashing anymore. So you can snap your ROS kinetic application and get it to run on a ROS melodic development machine, and it will just work because everything is self-contained within the snap. And similarly, they are not limited to Ubuntu. Snaps are running across Linux distro. At the moment, I think we have 43 distros that are officially supported. So it's not Ubuntu only, it's really a Linux thing.
Okay, so that means that I can write a ROS application and encapsulate into a snap, and then it will run in other robots even if they don't run Ubuntu.
Yes,
absolutely.
Okay, that's great. And then,
I'm sorry.
Sure.
Another thing that while Jeremy was speaking, I wanted to bring up was that you can have sometimes you can have applications that depend on the same library but different versions, and if you try to install both of those applications, you have dependency violations. Well, with snaps, that goes away. You can have an application that depends on the same. Depends on one version of libc and another application that depends on a different version of libc, but them being in a separate snap that goes away.
Yes, that's great. That's very great. That's super cool. And then the question that probably you get asked a lot, but are not snaps the same thing as Docker? What is the difference between snaps and Docker?
This seemed to have been a recurring question today. People seem to be interested. What is the difference between LXD, Docker, and snaps and things like that? I think snaps and LXD and Docker are kind of trying to solve different problems. The difference between LXD and Docker and snaps would be LXD creates namespaces on the system to run a sort of a kernel-less user space distribution on top of Linux. And Docker tries to solve. He uses the similar mechanisms to create namespaces, but just for a particular application version in those namespaces. And snaps, on the other hand, are clamped down applications that run on the host in a different way than, for example, LXD and snaps.
Okay. So, so from the point of view of the user creator, so I understand your technical description of the differences, but from the point of view of a person that is creating just a ROS application, so what would we expect? So what would be our difference?
So, for example, a snap would be immutable. It's a non-modified version. Let's say that if there was you distributed it in a LXD container and a snap. If there was some kind of vulnerability in your application or whatnot, somebody could potentially overwrite portions of your application and Trojan it or anything like that. In snaps, that goes away because it's a read-only access for all the applications. So there's a little bit of a tighter control on what
it's allowed.
Yes,
it's allowed. So if this application is some kind of malicious, could it be? If I have understood correctly, so it's kind of malicious. Let's say that you install in your robot an application that is trying to gain control of some other systems, and then it's not possible from a snap.
Exactly, and that's a good analogy. So, for example, let's say there's a web server or whatnot, and additional programs that run. And if one of them is vulnerable to something, they could potentially kind of cross-contaminate things. For example, they could make changes to your ROS application. And with snaps, that just isn't there because they're all read-only and separated.
Okay. Jeremy, you wanted to add? Okay, so great. So next question. I think that we clarified about the snaps and why people should work on that. But let me ask you another question that just came to my mind now. It's about creating snaps then with for ROS. So does it require anything special in the installation of the ROS distribution or the Ubuntu? Do we have to do something special in order to create a snap?
So Snap are built through a tool that is called Snapcraft.
Okay.
Snapcraft essentially has several plugins to snap applications of different types. So you can snap a Go application, a C++ application, a Python application, and we have developed already the plugins to use Catkin and Colcon, so you can very easily snap your ROS application. It's as easy as writing a YAML file. Filling it up properly with the plugin parameter correctly set, and then running Snapcraft. And the tool will do everything by itself. Compile your code, snap it into the actual snap, and you're ready to go.
And how do you send this application to the robot itself?
Snaps are usually distributed through the Snap store, and there's commands that you run snap to basically pull the application. For example, we were talking about Raspberry Pi earlier. Yes. There's the Ubuntu core available for it, and when you install it, you don't really access it directly on the console. What you do is it asks you for an email of what is your username, and then you can pull snaps directly from the store and enable and configure the system remotely.
Okay. Does it mean that we have to pay something in order to create a snaps? And
no, that's free. Anybody can create a user and publish snaps and things like that.
Okay, great. So then now I think that I have everything clarified for snaps. So now it's a matter of start reading more about it and creating our first snaps. I will put some.
We have a few tutorials on the Ubuntu blog. So you go on the blog, you search for the robotic section of it, and we have already a few posts that walk you through the snapping of your ROS application, both for ROS 1 and ROS 2.
Oh, great. I will put those links on the show notes of the episode.
Excellent.
Great. Then, what other projects related to robotics at Canonical you are working on?
At this point, I think Canonical is mostly focused on the security aspect, but we do collaborate on the CLI tools and things like that. Probably Jeremy can...
Can you tell us, Jeremy, what is the CLI? Because you have already mentioned, and then some of the audience... for the advanced users, they do know, but some of the audience maybe doesn't know. Can you clarify?
So CLI, command line interface. In ROS 1, that's your ROS topic, echo, ROS topic publish, ROS param, etc.
The basic commands of ROS.
Yeah, the command that you type on the terminal. Okay. And in ROS 2, the design of the CLI tool has been entirely rethought and redesigned, refactored. And when we got started, or at least when I got started with the ROS 2, I felt that a lot of the tools from ROS 1 CLI were missing in ROS 2. So we spent some time implementing those tools that we use every day and that were missing. Okay. And we have extended or added a few other tools. The same manner, we have written a few blog posts about that work, and we are also distributing a cheat sheet on the ROS 2 CLI that's freely available on GitHub. Look for my GitHub RTVs ROS 2 cheat sheet, and that's for you to go.
Okay, so then if there is something missing in the CLI for ROS 2, it is to you that we have to complain?
No, don't complain to me. The best thing you can do is to let us know, and actually the best thing you can do is to try to implement it for yourself. That's the best way to enter the ROS 2 ecosystem and the ROS 2 community. It's open source, so do it yourself, guys.
Okay. Very good answer. Okay. Good. Then one thing about the recent news about Canonical is that you recently joined the ROS2 Technical Steering Committee. So what is your role at that committee?
Yes, that's one of the newest developments, and we're actually very fortunate that we're able to join the steering committee, and we appreciate getting that possibility. As I was saying earlier, Canonical is making a commitment to ROS, and I guess we want to build or help and contribute to ROS security, in particular, to have ROS2 come out with security being from the get-go, not as a bolt-on. So that's the main focus of what Canonical is doing with the. We also run the security work group for ROS.
Okay.
But on top of that, we're also on the steering committee.
Okay, great. Then final question. Anything special that you are working on ROS2 that we can expect from Canonical in the next months?
There's, I guess there's a few things. There will be securing your robot as you move into production. White paper from Canonical.
Oh, nice.
But I guess, Jeremy, is there anything?
No.
We'll continue working on developing tools that we feel are missing, and we are
But basically on ROS2.
Essentially on ROS2.
Okay.
ROS1, we are not doing much development. We are doing essentially bug fixing, running some tools to discover, race condition and whatnot. We have submitted a bunch of small bug fix already, but at the moment we are focusing the development in ROS2, porting some nodes and tools that are missing.
Yeah.
We each have a Turtlebot 3 robot to play with at home, and starting from there we see what's missing and how we can play with the robot.
Okay.
And another thing to add is what we want. Canonical is very committed to making, user experience easier on Ubuntu, and by extension, we don't want just Ubuntu to be easy to use. We also want to have ROS on top of Ubuntu be easy to use.
Okay. Very clear. So thank you very much, guys, Dragon and Jeremy. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Okay, and that's all for today. Please, listeners, leave us a review on iTunes telling us how much you like the podcast or what you would like to have in it, and give us 5 stars in iTunes. And that's all for today. See you next week with a new lesson from the experts. And until then, keep pushing your ROS learning.
Developers.